You know me as the host of the Too Busy to Eat show, but I'm also founder and CEO of Too Busy to Eat, the protein bar company. I make what I feel is the healthiest and best tasting protein bar on the market. So now it developed from my own frustration of not being able to find a bar that tasted good and that was extremely healthy, that I could have maybe multiple times a day if I was really busy, or I could feed my kids and not feel guilty about what they ate. So I created this bar with grass-fed whey protein, no more than 3 grams of sugar, which is all naturally occurring, and it's gluten-free, non-GMO, the list goes on. So don't take my word for it. I want you to try them. And I want to give you incentive to try them. So I'm going to give you 20% off your first order. You can get a sample bag of bars, or you can get a whole box, whatever you want. Go to my website, toobusytoeat.com. Not hard to remember. Show, the company. And enter the promo code TBTE Show. TBTE Show. Actually, it's a discount box when you check out, and you'll get 20% off your first order, no matter how small or large. So go to the website now, try them out, and then let me know what you think. Welcome to the Too Busy to Eat show. Man, I hope you're ready, because today we have Dr. Dom D'Agostino with us. He is an assistant professor at University of South Florida, Morsani College of Medicine. He's a senior research scientist at the Institute of Human and Machine Cognition. That's amazing in itself. He is the ketogenic expert. I don't know anybody that knows more about the ketogenic diet than Dr. Dom. His research is sponsored by the Office of Naval Research, by the Department of Defense, just to name a couple big ones, and there's many more. He has been working on peak performance, how the ketogenic diet, enhances performance, also how it combats cancer and Alzheimer's and dementia, all these neurological diseases. So just put your seatbelt on and hold on, because Dr. Dom has so much amazing information. Let's get to the show. Well, welcome, Dr. Dom. I'm so excited you're on the show. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And, as we were just talking, you're navigating weather, which is, I really appreciate all the things you have to get through to get on to make this happen. So we really appreciate it. We had dealing with hurricanes, you're dealing with all kinds of things. So we really appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, weather is always unpredictable. It's like life, right? You never know what's going to come at you. So you got to be ready for it. And
you're flexible.
Just as you go, be flexible.
That's good. So, I gave the introduction of who you are, all the things you're doing and the impact you're having really in our country and beyond. But why don't you give us a little background on the journey that got you where you are today? Kind of your history.
Yeah. So, from high school, I was always very interested in nutrition, but at the same time, I realized that there wasn't a whole lot of careers in nutrition science. But I still decided to major in it, and at Rutgers University, where I was living in New Jersey, where my folks are. And about halfway through the program, I realized I should probably double major in biology too, just so it looks good on an application in the medical school. And I wanted to get into some basic science research, because that always helps if you're applying to medical school. Yeah. And I got sucked into basic science research, and I started working in a lab that was primarily neuroscience, but also physiology. And it was specifically how the brain controls our physiology, so the neural control of autonomic regulation, so breathing and heart rate, and even just all autonomic functions. And that really interests me. And I began to get an appreciation for how nutrition was impacting brain energy metabolism. The neuropharmacology of your brain was impacted by the food you eat. Although it wasn't a major focus of my research, I was researching how the brain responds to low levels of oxygen or hypoxia, and also just extreme environments. So I was getting into scuba diving at the time. And my mentor at the time was like a very good scuba diver and very into that. And so I became, really fascinated with extreme environments. and being able to adjust, our nutrition and various, doing various protocols to mitigate some of the consequences of extreme environments. And I decided to do my postdoctoral fellowship after finishing my PhD on that very topic. And it was, I applied for a number of grants, but I finally got one that hit from the Department of Defense, what was called a postdoctoral fellowship. And it was to develop very unique technologies that would allow us to understand the brain under those conditions, and from a very mechanistic level. And out of that research evolved my understanding of how different fuel sources for the brain could enhance and preserve normal brain activity under conditions of extreme environments. And that led me to the ketogenic diet, because it has a brain stabilizing, anti-seizure, metabolic enhancement activity. And it took about 10 years of research to kind of, or 6 or 7 to figure it out. And then another couple of years to actually do the research to show that. But there was already a significant amount of research to validate the anti-seizure effect of the ketogenic diet that I was never aware of, even going through a neuroscience program and being around neurologists. And that sparked my interest into, research on the ketogenic diet, but also ways to hack it, I guess you would say, and to develop forms of nutrition and forms of supplementation that, when taken orally, could put you into ketosis very rapidly and sustain it and increase your performance and also your capabilities, your neurological and physical capabilities under extreme environments. And that has been sort of the driving kind of motivation behind what I do, but it's spanned off into many different applications now.
Oh yeah, it is fascinating, and the impact in cancer and epilepsy, as you said, but the neurological diseases, all these, it's amazing. And listening to you on talking in many different environments, on the TED Talks and Tim Ferriss show, it's amazing. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because for some people, they don't know what the ketogenic diet is or ketosis is. So let's back up 1 second and say, you are to me, you're the expert on the ketosis. So why don't you give just a quick overview of what that is?
Yeah. It's a diet that evolved out of our understanding of how fasting changes brain energy metabolism and controls seizures. And this dates back 100 years or more. And some work at the Mayo Clinic by a few investigators in the early 1920s developed a diet that mimicked the physiological state of fasting. And it essentially involved eating a lot of fat, a moderate amount of protein to just ensure you weren't protein deficient, and very minimal, if any, carbohydrates. And by eating this dietary strategy that mimics fasting ketosis through the suppression of the hormone insulin, it drives fat oxidation in the liver, which makes ketones. Your body makes ketones. They spill out into your liver. Doesn't use ketones as an energy source, but they are, when they enter circulation, they're available for peripheral tissues, most importantly, to preserve and sustain brain energy metabolism in the face of depleted carbohydrate stores from your liver. And when you're in a state of ketosis, for reasons we don't fully understand or even appreciate, it normalizes brain homeostatic mechanisms and brain activity, especially in those that have drug-resistant seizures. Interestingly, independent of the etiology of the seizure, it controls seizures, which was always very fascinating to me. And so it's basically a way of eating that mimics the state of fasting that can be sustained independent of calorie restriction. Although calorie restriction can enhance the ketogenic process, you don't have to restrict calories, but you do have to restrict carbohydrates and supplement that, with additional fats into the diet, and then moderate protein to a degree where it's not driving gluconeogenesis to make excess glucose. So in practical terms, that means keeping protein at about 20% of calories or even less.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so for, somebody that is, doesn't have cancer or not worried, there's potential at any point, but cancer or any of the epilepsy or disease, what are the benefits to being on a ketogenic diet for just the average person?
Yeah, it might not be for everybody, but it's sure effective for controlling a number of different diseases. We think, the research isn't there yet because no one does preventative research, right? But I do think that shifting your body to eating, less carbohydrates as we age, our carbohydrate tolerance decreases with age. And there's no doubt in my mind about that. So eating more low carb in general is a good thing for delaying the early onset of chronic age-related diseases, type 2 diabetes, cancer, heart disease. The benefits from a practical standpoint, having done the ketogenic diet now for eight years or so, is that I have sustained energy throughout the day, independent of food availability, meaning that, if I'm going on like 8 hours without food, I'll be here for quite some time after that. My hunger will not will not stop me from doing my work and going to. And so there is a remarkable appetite suppressant effect that seems to be, happen in pretty much everybody. And the more you follow a ketogenic way of eating, I like to call it nutritional ketosis, because you could achieve it, through intermittent fasting. You could achieve it through a strict ketogenic diet, through a modified Atkins diet, or what we call a modified ketogenic. And there's variations of that in between, a more liberal version of the keto. And then you could achieve nutritional ketosis through supplementation, even medium chain triglycerides. Cooking with coconut oil will elevate your ketones. And there's sort of benefits to all that. There's different ways to achieve nutritional ketosis. And when you achieve it and sustain it, the benefits you get from that are cumulative over time. So you actually shift your metabolic physiology, you adapt it from being glucose dependent. So I think from a practical standpoint, you're weaning yourself from being glucose dependent. And that's very liberating, because when coming from a background where I was eating every 2 to 3 hours to, because I thought that was ideal, I was in a way kind of addicted to carbohydrates, in many ways. And getting your body away from that way of eating and eating less frequently has a lot of practical advantages. So and the energy that you get from it and the clarity that you get in your thinking can be beneficial too if your time demands are pretty intense. And I just find there's just a number of practical, even when traveling, I think it's beneficial to be on a ketogenic diet or to do intermittent fasting during that time. So I do have a large number of high-level executive people, CEOs, tell me their story about switching to nutritional ketosis and how it has impacted their productivity at work and most importantly, their health biomarkers too.
Oh, I mentioned earlier to you that I'm about 8 months on the ketogenic diet, and energy levels, there's no more the wave of energy of coming and going the afternoon where you feel like 2 or 3 o'clock where you need to take a nap. Well, it all goes away. It's amazing. And you mentioned, obviously we're all concerned about the disease prevention. If we can set ourselves up for the best chance possible down the road, it's fantastic. What is your kind of rhythm in the ketogenic? Because I know some of the hurdles for me at first was trying to figure it out. I'm got a busy schedule. I'm trying to figure out what is your rhythm. What's your rhythm? Your diet rhythm?
Yeah, I think it depends, and I think it's good to be flexible too, right? But on a daily basis, I do travel a lot. About a third of the time I'm traveling. But like today, if I wake up anywhere between 5 to 7 or 8, I usually have what used to be a huge breakfast. I was a big breakfast eater. I've cut that down significantly more now. So I just have maybe 2 or 3 eggs and some fish, chicken, or beef, and a little bit of green vegetables in that. So relatively small, maybe 500-600 calories. And then I will do like a butter MCT coffee and put that in a thermos, have a little bit in the morning, put that in a thermos, bring to work. And the next time I'll eat won't be until dinner, which is usually by the time I get home and kind of settle in, somewhere around 7 or 8 o'clock for dinner. So I ride out that 12 hours, on a relatively small ketogenic meal and maybe some ketogenic fats that are in my coffee. Today I happen to be testing a new product that work with different companies. So actually, I don't work with any company in particular, and I don't have any of my own products. But I do test products to validate their effects. So today, I kind of wait until I'm in a semi-fasted state, and then I will look at my blood markers in response to acute ingestion of a ketone supplement that's fairly new on the market. I'm not even sure it's out yet. So that's my routine today. And I do, probably more often than not, during the mid part of the day, I'm doing some kind of blood work testing on an acute response to a ketogenic supplement or something that I formulated myself. So I'm working on formulating something for the SEALs and actually NASA too. And I want to
formulate it. Well, so you started out, I mean, early on, you were mentioning even in your progression, you started working on extreme conditions. So and that connected you. I mean, I love listening to the stories about you working on things for the SEALs. So how has that been? That's pretty exciting to me.
Yeah, it is. My work has been done through the Office of Navy Research, and my original work was very mechanistic, and my work, on basic science mechanisms, looking at fundamentally like neurons firing action potentials, and evolving that work into actual product formulation and human application from like a rat model. So we have different rodent models that we will do preclinical or pre-human testing on. And we essentially will be testing, now we're testing about over a dozen different types of exogenous ketone supplements and formulations of those supplements to identify what's most neuroprotective, to identify what has the greatest capacity to enhance physical performance. And then once we identify the efficacy of that, we will do a chronic, feeding study to look at the safety of that. And then we do a lot of kind of like fancy mechanistic work, looking at inflammation and other markers. But the real interesting thing to me is that I can actually do it myself, is actually taking whatever that exogenous ketone formula is and in my office or the lab and like formulating it and ingesting it and then experiencing, myself and doing blood work on myself and also, moving that into the special operations community. And I mean, we're working with the SEALs, but there's also interest in, Delta Force and Air Force are interested in supplements that could enhance, maybe preserve cognitive function under low pressure, low oxygen. So right now we're at the initial stages where a lot of the science has been done. So now we're in the stage of getting safety approval from the FDA for some of the key sort of ketone esters that are very powerful because they are not necessarily found in nature, and they're very potent. So they have the potential for side effects if they're over ingested. So we want to do the proper safety studies, and then there's various types of ketone salts formulated with various types of ketogenic fats, and the optimal formula has not been really identified, and we're really at the cusp of something that's pretty big because this research is very new. The development of ways to produce acute ketosis is relatively new, although it's been funded by DARPA and DoD for over a decade. The actual, like having an actual product that you can take by mouth, that is new. And I found this out a few years ago and thought it would be really cool if we could get this out of the special operations community, or just a way, and into the mass market, and make it available for the public. And probably more importantly, for specific diseases that actually have no therapy. Yeah. So we're working on Angelman syndrome. Seizures obviously are important to us, and that's actually part of Angelman syndrome, Alzheimer's disease, cancer, ALS. These are all areas that we're intensely doing, at the moment right now, preclinical studies. And the idea is to lay the proof of concept foundation, showing efficacy, and then moving that into human clinical trials.
Which is, listening to some of your other interviews, you are making an impact. The ketogenic diet's making an impact on things that are really hard to treat. I mean, it's I think the different types of cancers that don't react to chemotherapy or can't radiation, all this stuff can be enhanced, and the disease can be fought through the ketogenic diet. Some of them, not everything can be, but advancements are amazing. I think it's exciting what you're doing and the big scale things, because it can really impact everybody, but that disease, attacking disease, is just fascinating to me. It's amazing.
Yeah, and when it comes to cancer, we're not advocating it as a standalone therapy. And I think some people may interpret some of what we do by that, but actually we've never done a diet, or we've never done a study where we use the ketogenic diet as a standalone therapy. We always use it as an adjuvant to some other thing, whether that be, our first study was hyperbaric oxygen, and now we're doing, with ketone supplementation. We also have a pretty active drug research. So I'm in pharmacology. So we look at drugs like metformin, dichloroacetate, and how these may synergize and enhance the anti-cancer effect of the ketogenic diet by hitting the same pathways, but more intensely. With the ketogenic diet hits many pathways, but you could kind of site specifically in a cancer specific manner, further augment some of those pathways with a few relatively non-toxic, cheap drugs. And we're interested in showing that and validating that, so it can be implemented in the clinic. And I'm not against the standard of care therapy, which sometimes our work is interpreted like that. But for diseases like glioblastoma, brain cancer, the standard of care does very little. So if we can enhance that, or advanced metastatic cancer, there really is no therapy you would give someone. It's just palliative. And the model that we actually use in our lab is an advanced metastatic cancer model. So we test it in the worst case scenario. And we do our initial testing and validation of all our therapies in kind of that worst case, advanced, aggressive stage 4 metastatic cancer model. And then if it works in that model, then that becomes very encouraging to follow up on that particular therapy and to start doing combinational therapies, with the main focus being, keeping it as non-toxic as possible.
Right.
And that's where we're at now.
Yeah. And by enhancing, the ketogenic diet, by following it, enhances what the other treatments are doing. And you can use less of those toxic chemicals that are needed to combat these diseases, but you're using less doses, and just this more damage in the body. It's just
that's right.
It's really applicable all the way around.
Yeah, it sensitizes the tumor to the effects of radiation or chemo or various immune-based drugs, and at the same time, especially for radiation and chemo, it helps to decrease some of the side effects associated with that, including, with radiation, you get tremendous inflammation. And we know the ketogenic diet has a remarkable anti-inflammatory effect. It sensitizes the cancer to the standard of care and protects your normal healthy cells from the therapy.
Right. And that's the optimum. I mean, putting your body at optimum receptibility to the drugs, to everything is great. Yeah. Now, you're doing so many different things. Is there one thing that you are more excited about, or something that stands out in all the things you're doing?
Yeah, well, kind of on that theme, it's like the emerging applications of nutritional ketosis are really exciting to me. We're doing some work now on looking at the effects of nutritional ketosis on stress and on behavioral correlates of anxiety, and looking at the effects of animals in ketosis on a carb-based diet and nutritional ketosis. And we're doing some motor function testing. And also, I guess we're looking at the effects of, the differences between different types of exogenous ketones. So simply raising blood ketones has an effect, and but there's two ketone bodies. There are acetoacetate and beta hydroxybutyrate, and the ratio of those two in the blood, which is impacted by the specific formula, has different effects on different animal models, and also different effects on performance. And that's kind of what I'm interested in, is identifying that optimal formula. And there's big differences in it. I mean, some formulas can actually produce a decrease in performance if they're taken too much. So finding that sweet spot in the formulation and on the dosing, on what dosing might be optimal.
Now, how do you, in the lab, how do you do that? I know there's animal testing, and then how do you get that, figure out that fine line, whether it's with the performance-wise,
Yeah.
You have just test subjects? Do you work with the SEALs? Do you work with, what's the way you figure that out?
Well, I do get a lot of feedback anecdotally from, guys that are using the product, and that is incorporated into our preclinical animal models. But one way, maybe we might have 6 different formulas, and we have, a couple hundred rodents or rats or mice, and then we feed them in a very precise amount with what's called an intragastric gavage. So it's basically like a tube feeding, and it's like a quick in and out, and you feed them instead of injecting it, you give it to them orally. And then you wait about 30 minutes until it starts to hit that peak pharmacokinetic profile, blood levels. And then you'll do whatever test you're interested in. Like we do the elevated plus maze for anxiety. There's a variety of other tests, but for motor function, it could be you put them on a treadmill-like device called the roto rod. And that could be set for accelerating, where it speeds up. And then you count how many seconds it takes them to fall off. And there's a little sensor. Once he falls off, it stops the clock. And you do that over and over. You have to train them on it first, because there's a training response. And then you do a number of trials and take an average of that. And, you do a number of animals per each group, per each supplement, and you find out which ones were able to stay on the rotorod the longest. And then you could set it for endurance to spin slow over time. And you could see how long they were capable of staying on that treadmill-like device before they fall off. So you can get an assessment of total speed, which is kind of like sprinting, the 40-yard dash or 100-yard dash, and then you have like a marathon thing that you could do. And we want to do like a strength-based things where maybe we could put like a little backpack on them and have them climb up a ladder to get to either an avoidance paradigm or something that they'd be attracted to, so we could assess their physical strength. And that's a little more tricky, and we're thinking about ways to do that. But for right now, it's just, assessing motor function. And that may not always pan out to human models, but it'll give us an indication of what agents and what specific formulas may hold the most promise for human, physical studies.
That's right. So and that gives you enough information to go and test it. And obviously, I know you're your own lab rat. You do everything on yourself, and you get to get that feedback and see how it affects you. But that's a great challenge. I'm just envisioning rats climbing ladders. I think that'd be fantastic. Something to that effect, because the strength component is, in all my research, the strength component is most of the time is missing in diet, and most of the time I find it's missing, especially in the ketogenic diet. And I just, it would be great to know what the optimum way of, for those that are into powerlifting. I know you do some lifting yourself, and there's it would be great to know, well, what is our optimum supplementation? Is ketogenic going to enhance the strength component? That'd be pretty neat to be able to test that.
Yeah. And also what the ketones may synergize with. So we're also into just energy metabolites. We do research on, oral forms of alpha ketoglutarate, which can feed into the Krebs cycle and make the body make energy. So we're taking what we call Krebs cycle or TCA cycle intermediates, creatine, stimulants, maybe caffeine or some other interesting compounds, and we formulate them in a way to see if we can enhance and further augment ketone metabolism to enhance the cell's bioenergetic capacity. So they're the ability of the muscle cell to to shuttle nutrients into it and to generate ATP from those substrates. And there's a variety of ways you can do that, from various things that can enhance the process of getting these substrates across the membranes to enhancing there's various enzymes along the way, like pyruvate dehydrogenase complex, PDH. And PDH is kind of like your gatekeeper for energy flow. And there's ways to enhance that. So will that synergize when you start to combine some of these things together? And that's, I think I would have to say, that's an interesting area or avenue of research, and to do that, the synergy between some of these compounds.
Right, because just alone you're going to get so far, and if you can mix them, match them right, and get the right doses, for optimum performance. And when we're talking about, I'm talking about the average person, well, how much does it matter? Well, it matters a lot if you're a Navy SEAL trying, you're 50 feet underwater, trying, all these different, extreme conditions. It's a huge advantage,
Absolutely. And some of the things, even some of the herbal or plant-based things, are just limited severely by their bioavailability. But there's a couple simple compounds or even fatty acids that, if they're put into the formula, your pharmacokinetic profile will increase 400%. So you have 400% greater bioavailability of that substance in the blood if you simply add, 3 or 4 grams of a certain kind of fatty acid or another cofactor that may enhance, some enzyme that can enhance function. So these are some of the things that we're working out in the lab.
That's great.
And we have a hyperbaric chamber. We have a number of hyperbaric chambers, and some of them have microscopes inside them where we can visualize like the mitochondria or the cell membrane. And that technology or that equipment may provide kind of the mechanistic or the scientific rationale to move that particular combination into an animal model study.
Okay.
And then we also have chambers where we do some animal-based research where we can screen various compounds and look at physiological, neurological response to that extreme environment, whether it be hypoxia or hyperoxia. And it becomes a screening tool, to further move that compound into formulation in human trials.
So you are just to sum it all up, you're making superhumans. I love it. That's pretty neat. Well, will we be able to advance? I mean, it's pretty exciting. You're on the beginning portion of really figuring out how we can advance and our bodies can do more and more and more. And who knows what the limit is? It's pretty exciting.
Yeah. And it's really it is about enhancing, human capability and creating a superhuman. Yeah. But from a military perspective, it's also about preserving that capability in that extreme environment. Because if your normal activity sharply declines when you fly someone up to altitude and drop them off for mission, that's bad. So it's about ensuring or, mitigating decrements to ensure that the capability for their training still exists in that environment.
And they're high, just keeping that at where they baseline without dropping is making them superhuman, pushing them beyond what normal.
Absolutely.
Which is awesome. Yeah. Now I know I could talk to you for days. So I love, this is right in my wheelhouse, but if we were going to bring it back and say, somebody's listening and they just heard about the ketogenic diet. This is the first time, or they've got a little bit here and there. Could you give, for advising somebody on overall health, they could do just one thing to change their change their health right today, what would you suggest?
For health, kind of maybe independent of some of the ketogenic diet stuff that I talked about, I think, your podcast is all about being busy, right? Like too busy to eat.
Yeah.
And I think we do have a preoccupation with food. So I think maybe just trying decreasing your food intake. Like I talked to people, I was just talking to some medical students, and they do eat. They felt that eating 4 to 6 times a day was good. And like, it's hard with all the studying. And sometimes they're forced to only eat 1 meal a day, and they suffer tremendously because they're starving. But if you adapt your body to less frequent feedings, and maybe, once or twice a week, do intermittent fasting, so it's not such a shock. If you do that just once a week, that conditions your body to the subsequent, next time you do that, it's not a stress and you're able to cope with it. Sometimes you may even have enhanced energy. So I would say kind of wean yourself off of sugar and carbs, because I think we do have a carb addiction. But from a broader perspective is, because, your audience is very, very busy, I would say take at least 1 hour per day of what I like to call creative downtime, where you shut your brain off. Yeah. And that may be hard for some of your listeners to do. I know it's hard for me to do sometimes, to just completely shut my brain off and not think about, all the academic obligations that I have or whatever. But that can make me so much more productive the next day, and it keeps me happy. And, and it's a good thing for relationships too, if you're married or have a significant other, to spend that creative downtime, with them, and it's just, your life will improve in general. And that's probably a hard thing for many CEO types to embrace and implement. Right. So that would be my main advice.
Awesome. Yeah. It's funny because I just started something recently, because I had somebody had told me about this a little bit, about being more productive when you are unproductive at times. And so I was advised by another kind of CEO person to schedule in unproductive time. I mean, it sounds silly and like, okay, but in my schedule, I have a block of time where I won't, no phone calls, no emails. It's just time with the kids, or time with, or just sitting on the couch. And it is recharging to where I feel now, after a few weeks, when I'm up in the next day, I mean, I feel more productive, and it's because of that downtime. If you don't ever take it, your body's just running on treadmill. So that's great advice. Really.
And you may need an accountability partner to say, hey, you need this. So my wife does that. It's like, hey, you're working too much. Let's do this. And I'm always very thankful that she pulls me away from that, because I am really so excited about my work. Sometimes it's hard to sleep at night, and it's hard to detach myself from that. But when I do, it's really rewarding to have that time away. And I'm more refreshed and recharged when I come back. Yeah.
You're more efficient when you do come back. That's fantastic. Well, thank you. And so for those, the best way to reach Dr. Dom is to go to ketonutrition.org. So if you have some questions, so ketonutrition.org, it'll be in the show notes. He is, I know from my perspective, he is very responsive, but he has spent a lot of time of getting a ton of free resources on that website. So I encourage, if you want to know anything about the ketogenic diet, about what he's doing, what's coming up, I would really suggest you go check out that website. Dr. Dom, I can't thank you enough. This was fantastic. I just personally, I mentioned to you, but I want to tell everybody, several months ago, I started listening to your podcast on other shows, and literally I got on the ketogenic diet, and last 8 months have been the healthiest and most energetic time of my life. And I really have to thank you for that. So thank you very much.
Great. That's great to hear. I hear that a lot, actually. So that's really rewarding and fulfilling to me that people have listened to a podcast here or there and implemented this nutritional approach, and it's made a big difference in their productivity and their health too.
Yeah, it's got to keep you going. I mean, you're busy, you can be pulled by so many different directions, but when people tell you, hey, you've really changed my life, that's got to feel good.
Oh, that's the best part of the day. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thank you. And thanks for giving me this platform to speak. I appreciate it. So it makes a big difference.
It's for the Too Busy to Eat show listeners, it's a huge treat. So I can't thank you enough. Thanks so much for being on the show. I wish you the best. I'll be following everything you do. And I'm excited about the things you're producing. It's great.
Thank you. Appreciate it.